am Sasha Thackaberry-Voinovich, and I am here with Todd Marks to talk about his career journey, which has been extraordinary and really moves across fields. And that's one of the things that people are going to need to be able to do now. We're going to be able to need to work in more than one place, in more than one context, and sort of think across different types of situations, industries, all the things. So welcome, Todd. Why don't you start with just an intro as to where you are today in your company, and then we'll sort of reverse and go back to the beginning.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Sasha. So today I'm the president and CEO of MindGrub Technologies. We make and market software for clients. We have a parent company, Marks Inc., that I'm also the CEO of. And underneath that, there's restaurants and robotic centers. We have a co-working lab called the Mind Hub. We get into venture capital where we invest in SaaS companies and AI first companies. So I got my hands in a lot of pots.
Yeah, that is quite a bit. That is quite a bit. And it wasn't a straight line for you to get here. When you were 22, were you thinking this is what you would do?
No, when I was 22, I aspired to sleep in a car and go rock climbing all day.
Ah, awesome. And how much, was there quite a bit of rock climbing at that point?
By 22, I was starting to actually start my career. I was a climber in my late teens. I got sponsored for a bit, went over to Europe, had a lot of fun, and my parents really pushed me to go to college. I frankly didn't want much to do with it, but I did go to school. I went to a good school and majored in math with a minor in education. Graduated in 98 and became a high school teacher because you had summers off and I could go sleep in a car and go rock climbing also.
And go rock climbing. Yeah, that sounds like a good lifestyle, right?
Yeah, and my climbing and kayaking partner, I did get married at the time and started to have kids. And, even as a teacher was, we struggled to start paying for kids as a teacher. And this was 98, 99. And the internet happened. And my another kayaking partner at the time, showed me a product called Macromedia Flash, which later it's actually called Future Splash, became Flash, and then Adobe bought it. And we started making some of the first websites and e-learning experiences. And this was 2000 to 2001. And September 11th happened. The market got soft. We were undercapitalized, so we split up. I then started MindGrub Technologies as an independent contractor, doing a lot of Flash and Flex development at the time. And it was hard. It was very difficult to go from 1 to 2 people. I created another company called Marks and Spencer about Windows Mobile. We created a product called ViaPlace, all struggling businesses. And really it took until about 2008. So I graduated in 98, 10 years. So I tell people it takes 10 years, 10,000 hours of doing what you're going to eventually be good at, right? It's not just I am, a teacher for 10 years, 10,000 hours, and all of a sudden I could be a CEO, right? But I started focus on it. The other thing too is I was working in Chicago at the time in 2008. Even though I'd started my company MindGrub, I was an independent contractor. I wasn't really able to get a second, third person on a contract. I was working in Chicago for another agency at Motorola as a contractor, and I had a real need to come home. So my kids were here. I would end up with full custody of 4 kids now. I have 7 kids. And I had to be home and I had to be able to work around here. So, there was this real need in my life to be able to come home and I wasn't able to, really find, careers in Baltimore that really clicked with me that I could generate enough revenue for my kids. And then the third real piece here, right? So 10,000 hours need and then disruption. So in 2008, Apple released the iPhone SDK. And so for the first time, we were able to make mobile apps. And I'd been a service provider for years, and I made some of the first mobile apps for clients. First 3 clients in the door were Dell, Yamaha, and Geico. They would fly in and take a yellow cab to my basement. And we went 10 straight years, Inc. 5000, around making some of the most enterprise mobile apps in the world.
That is amazing. And so how much of this was you were like, I'm gonna dive into the next thing? Like some of it sounds like expertise that's been built up over time in a very intentional way. I'm totally with you on the just living longer does not give you more skills. You have to be intentional about it. And then sort of a recognition of the opportunity when it appeared.
Yeah, so I've always been, I guess, a risk taker. So, we drag our kayaks through the woods and come across some big waterfall, and I was the first person to say, I think we can go over that waterfall. And, I've been to Everest and, done some amazing climbs and mountaineering and stuff. And, I like taking risks, but I like taking risks with a lot of safety around me, right? Whether they're throw lines or, ropes to hold me against the cliff. So most people are not, they're risk averse. So, I happen to like taking a lot of risks. I hate being a tourist. Like, if you're like, hey, let's get in a line and wait for hours to do the same thing that everybody else in this line is going to do, that makes my skin crawl. I don't like to do things that everybody's doing. So that being the case, it started out with climbing and kayaking, but when tech showed up, in 94 was my freshman year in high school, and the internet came out, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And so I'm exploring the internet. And then, with the big .com, in rush in 99 to 2001, like, wow, this is cool. I want to start a business, right? That's the cool new thing. And then after getting my 10,000 hours, as soon as the iPhone SDK came out, nobody was doing it. The language iOS didn't exist before. It was created basically to make mobile applications. And that was like, in climbing and kayaking, you call it a first descent or a first ascent, whether you're going up or down. And so that was a first descent to make the first mobile apps in the world. And I love it, right? It's like an adrenaline rush for me, even though it's, not paddling a kayak, it's making mobile apps, but I was all in. I'm, an opportunistic person. I had my experience. I had a real need with my family, and I'm a risk taker. And so I jumped all in and, fortunately, had success with MindGrub and, where I hadn't with other businesses.
Oh, that is fantastic. So not everyone is a risk taker or a rock climber. And so for the other folks, right, with sort of like a different mindscape, or people who are getting those 10,000 hours, right? Like people who are working towards developing that skill set. What is your advice for career preparation? Like what are the big things, the big skills or dispositions that people should really be thinking about or working on?
Well, I mean, let's see, we like talking about, quotes and expressions and stuff, but if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I mean, I think that's where you have to start. I see too many students that they're like, I want money. And so they go into some career, but they hate the career and they burn out. And that's, that's a little bit of a waste, but, just pursue what you love doing. You'll never work a day in your life. But pair that with opportunity, right? So where there is disruption, right? Even if you're not the one and you're not doing the first ascent, right? You're not the entrepreneur, you can still go into industries that are disruptive. You can take jobs with employers and you might not be the entrepreneur, but you can be an intrapreneur and you can be a leader. So look for that disruption, follow a path of doing things what you enjoy doing, and eventually, kind of it'll click for you, right? The stars will align and you're going to be happy and successful.
Yeah, it's sort of that combination of things that you can do, things that you enjoy doing, and what you can also make a living at, right? Because taking care of your kids, that's a for real thing too.
Yeah, well, that is true. Yeah, until we're almost empty nesters and we're going to go live in a van, which is nice. So I'll finally be able to fulfill some of my life dreams there. But I would do it all over again. We adore our 7 kids to death, and we miss them dearly every time they leave the house.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So one final question, which is, we have been talking about quotes, some inspirational stuff. I love if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Someone who is worried about the economy right now, for someone who is worried about AI disruption, what inspiration or career advice would you give to people who have a lot of anxiety about it? Because there's a lot of people out there right now who are super worried.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a whole conversation unto itself, but we do have a major spending problem in the United States, right? I mean, we're a consumer-based economy. We spend a lot of money. It includes our government that overspends. So, what I would tell people is to be, financially wise, save your money, build up that war chest, right? If you got a ton of money in the bank, you're not worried about the economy. And I know there's a lot of people that are paycheck to paycheck, but
Right.
you know, you don't need Netflix and Apple TV and Max, right? We're a consumer-based economy. So
Yeah.
even people that are paycheck to paycheck, there are places you can be saving money. And I just think we need to be a lot more, you know, fiscally conservative and build up that personal war chest, because then, you know, then your worries about economics go away. And then with that war chest, you know, invest in things that basically give you, what's the expression, like real estate, for instance. If you can, you know, get that first loan, get real estate, and then, you know, rent that real estate out, right? It's so important, because then you get what's called passive income. So the issue is with a lot of people is you paycheck to paycheck and you spend 100% of that paycheck, right? And it feels like you need to do that because we're a consumer-based economy and we have kids and expenses, right? But you have to look at, like, how can you save a little bit of money, invest in something that then provides passive income, because that passive income isn't as subjective to, you know, economic forces. So it takes a lot of fiscal discipline, and unfortunately, as a country, you know, we don't have as much fiscal discipline as others, and we need to do that across the board, whether it's individually or our government, unfortunately, needs to be more fiscally conservative and disciplined.
Preaching to the choir, I'm a big believer in not buying things you can't pay for, right? Like,
yeah, like layaway, like that should be like, we should regulate some of those things away. Like layaway, you can't really afford it, right? Why do something with interest, right? As somebody said to me, they said, don't pay interest, charge interest. It's a really powerful, you know, quote, right? Don't pay interest, charge interest. Right. And everything we do, like, you know, we have more credit card debt than any other country because we're buying things we can't afford.
Right.
Right. We need to stop. Right. We need to be, you know, a little bit more conservative and responsible. And so don't buy things you can't afford. Don't pay interest. Definitely don't pay high interest. Like, if anything, don't keep money on a credit card. The interest rates are through the roof. You know, if you're going to have any debt, maybe, like, you know, car rates are coming down now. House rates are going up, rent for a little bit, right? But if you can buy a house, buy a house.
Right.
Because, you know, it creates equity for you too.
It does.
Know, there's just, I mean, there's like a whole show like Susie that'll tell you how to actually, you know, save money. But it's really important right now because, you know, I worry, like a lot of people. I mean, if you look at the, you know, the bill that they're trying to pass now at the federal level, unfortunately, it is going to put, I think it's like 15 million people off Medicare. And, you know, everybody needs health insurance, right? So it's unfortunate. And it isn't, you know, they're trying to say like, well, it's because they're trying to give, you know, tax cuts to the rich. I don't think people realize that, like, employers, every individual pays a lot of taxes. We all know it. Well, the employers match every single individual's taxes. So whatever an employee pays, you know, in FICA, Social Security, disability, Medicare, the employer pays on their behalf as well, right? So there's a lot of taxes that everybody pays. But the one thing we don't look is, how can we spend less money? Like, as government, like, we absolutely need to provide Medicare. We probably should reduce how much we tax, you know, companies, to keep them in state, to keep them in country.
Yeah.
But we just need to look at how we spend less money and how we can be more fiscally conservative. Businesses, we should not have more debt than 10% of our annual revenue, right? You're not a healthy company if your debt exceeds more than 10% of your annual revenue. The debt for our country exceeds our national GDP every year, right? And yet we still have AAA bond ratings, but, you know, in theory, our debts are too high.
Yes, I obviously, like, here at Newstate University, 100% on board, because we're all about, like, debt-free certificates and degrees. That's what we do. I don't want anybody to go into student loan debt. I have too many friends who 20, 30 years later are still paying off student loans. Like, it's out of control.
For skills that now are automated. So they're carrying a debt for something that no longer is relevant. It's, you know, it's a tragedy.
No, and to your point about the curriculum evolution, those skills have, you know, like, long since been irrelevant, but what's replacing it? Like, have we replaced it with the right skills to be successful? So I think Like I could have a whole conversation with you about thriftiness because that's sort of what gave us the capital to start this university in the first place. But I take thrifty to like a whole new level. Like I live in Cleveland. Like we should do a show on like personal thriftiness. So, but those two things are connected, right? Personal thriftiness, anxiety about the economy, and being able to be flexible when your work changes, right? So I think that is some amazing advice and some unexpected advice. I don't think everyone would have expected you should really think about how many TV subscriptions you need, right? But it's important, right? Yeah, we just got rid of Apple TV actually, which was a hard one, but awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. I really appreciate it.
You too, Sasha. Thank you.